Hi everybody! Today's episode 1600 features video snippets from Viva Frei, trans rights and hunger strikes, also from Robert Gouveia, Gavin Newsom about to lose again. Highlights begin today, June 21st, 2025, at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Don't miss this great lineup.
Help keep free speech alive. Please join Murtech on Locals, Truth Social and on X.
From Viva Frei, trans rights and hunger strikes. From SCOTUS ruling banning treatment to gender dysphoria by proxy.
And wrapping up with Robert Gouveia, Gavin Newsom about to lose again.
Don't miss this great live stream with Murtech on Rumble tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. The link is in the description box below. Thank you for all your support and may God bless. Oh, by the way, don't forget to follow me and click the thumbs up button. Thanks again.
Hi everybody, this is John Murphy at Murtech.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on June the 21st in the year of our Lord 2025. Happy Saturday, everyone. Let's go ahead and click here, Murtech on Rumble. This is the video that you're watching right now. Let's go ahead and click on it. Murtech on Rumble and pause that. Okay, let me close out the live chat here and slide down here and click the Show More button. And we have information from Viva Frei and Robert Gouveia. And I want to go ahead and get some live chats or some shout outs in here. There we go. Looks like T Maxfield just started following my channel, and Baker 468 just started following my channel, and Stevie K10 just started following my channel, and TASTK just started. Oh, that would be, there we go. Screwed that up. There we go. Okay. TASTK just started following my channel. Okay. So thank you very much, folks, for following my channel. I greatly appreciate that. And that's just how simple it is to make a comment. Just put some information in this comment box and press that comment button. Boom. You're there. You're there. Okay. Let's see what Viva Frei has to say. Trans right and hunger strikes. From SCOTUS ruling banning treatment to gender dysphoria by proxy. Amazing. Let's take a listen to this and see what he has to say. Let me get it back to the beginning for you.
Hunger strikes and trans rights. I'm sure you've all heard the news. The Supreme Court has come down with a devastating ruling that basically declares that the standard of overview of state legislation that prohibits trans treatment, and I put that bloody word in quotes, and bloody, I don't even mean ironically. It's not treatment, it's child genital mutilation, period, full stop. There was an argument as to whether or not a state could implement such a legislation without it being discriminatory and therefore unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court came down in a ruling and basically said, we're applying the rational scrutiny. I'm going to read the article just so I don't mess it up. But bottom line, it's a state issue and it's not a discriminatory law by its nature. So therefore, we don't have to apply a more stringent interpretation. And the states can implement whatever rules they want. It's up to them. We'll get to the dumbest judge on the bench, Sotomayor, in a second. But Slate, which is a far left-leaning activist journalistic organization, put that in quotes, writes, Amy Coney Barrett doesn't think the Supreme Court's anti-trans ruling went far enough. Let's read, shall we? On Wednesday, the Supreme Court delivered a brutal blow to transgender equality in that it won't let children mutilate their genitals with hormone replacement therapy, puberty blockers, bottom surgery, double mastectomies under the guise of gender-affirming care, in quotes. upholding a Tennessee law that outlaws gender-affirming care for trans youth. Its decision effectively greenlit similar bans that nearly half of the states have already enacted, cutting off access to treatment for thousands of minors across the country. Minors accessing treatment, in quote, treatment which permanently damages and mutilates their bodies, their genitals, resulting in bone density that is insufficient, micropenises, the inability to orgasm later on in life. It's treatment. It's treatment. My goodness, with treatment like that, who the hell needs Dr. Mengele's torture? As expected, the conservative supermajority hung together to justify these bans on the basis of dubious logic and contested factual claims, with Chief Justice Roberts writing for the majority and all three liberals dissenting. Yet there was friction even within the conservative bloc, with at least 3 Republican-appointed judges agitating to go even further in order to rubber stamp future discrimination against transgender Americans. Oh yes, it's discrimination not to let a child mutilate themselves. Why? Discrimination to not let children get tattoos, smoke drugs, drink alcohol. Dahlia Lithwick and Mark Joseph Stern discussed the court's decision. Oh, we're not going down there. I'm not even reading this. I want to get to the probably the dumbest judge on the bench. And speaking of dubious claims and inadequate logic, Sotomayor, it's like people have forgotten what an absolute idiot she is. In the context of some of the COVID-19 lawsuits that made their way to the Supreme Court, Sotomayor at one point said that there were 100,000 children, which were, just so I don't misquote her. This was from a CNN fact check. I forget who it was. This was from a left-wing fact check. It says a Sotomayor claim about COVID-19 and children. Sotomayor, a liberal, tried during the Friday hearing to emphasize the danger posed by the Omicron variant of the virus. She said, quote, "We have over 100,000 children, which we've never had before, in serious condition, and many others on ventilators," end quote. Facts first, Sotomayor's claim about children wasn't even close to accurate. According to the federal data at the time Sotomayor spoke, fewer than 5,000 people under the age of 18, children, were hospitalized. They're children with COVID when they're hospitalized with COVID, allegedly, but they're adults that can go mutilate their bodies when it comes to trans rights of gender-affirming care, quote, end quote. All right. Fewer than 5,000 under the age of 18 were hospitalized in the U.S. when confirmed or suspected cases of COVID-19. The reported number of the child hospitalizations was 4,000 or whatever on Thursday, the day before the hearing, and was still under 5,000 Monday afternoon. And though there is no additional data on how many hospitalized children are in, quote, serious condition, a term Sotomayor didn't define but is used by hospitals to refer to patients who are actually ill with vital signs that may be unstable, it's overwhelmingly likely that none of them are. Sotomayor could have correctly said that the number of children hospitalized with COVID-19 is at record levels. So here's how I have to tell her. Here's how you do it next time, Sotomayor, you dumbass. You could have said it's at record levels without being an abject idiot. And she could have correctly said that the number has spiked in the last month, but she didn't. She could have. But next time, Sotomayor, you got your talking point from the fact checkers, because fact checkers are godforsaken, wordsmiths of the devil activists. In this particular decision, this is what Sotomayor wrote in her dissent with sadness. Last page of it, but I'll read it here. See what we got here. Male but not female adolescents can receive medicines that help them look like boys, and female but not male adolescents can receive medicines that help them look like girls. Tennessee's law expressly classifies on the basis of sex and transgender status. So the Constitution and settled precedent require the court to subject it to intermediate scrutiny. The majority contorts this logic and precedent to say otherwise, inexplicably declaring it must uphold Tennessee's categorical ban on life-saving medical treatment so long as, quote, any reasonably conceivable state of facts, end quote, might justify it. Thus, the majority subjects a law that plainly discriminates on the basis of sex to mere rational basis review. By retreating from meaningful judicial review exactly where it matters most, the court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims. In sadness, I dissent. Jackson did something similar in another one of her dissents. It's I forget how she qualified her dissent. Just shut your traps and just say I dissent with sadness. What's ironic here, iron law of woke projection. The court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims. In reality, they are victimizing children to the whims of their unhinged, deranged parents. it is a known fact. I won't give a number because I don't want to get it totally wrong, that the majority or a significant portion of so-called trans children are actually on the spectrum of autism. Easily manipulated, easily manipulatable, easy targets for freaking disgusting perverts, Dr. Mengeles who love human experimentation, and online influencers who love clout and know exactly who they need to target to manipulate. Life-saving medical treatment to irreparably damage the bodies of children. Well, considering that this idiot thought 100,000 children were in serious condition for COVID, it's no shit, Sherlock, that she doesn't know what the hell life-saving treatment actually is. The whims of political whims. My ass. It's indoctrination of mentally vulnerable children. I'm going to look for the stat as we talk about this, but I would argue, and I think many have, that this is transgender ideology by proxy. Because in as much as you had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, this is parents, and I would dare say majority mothers, who would make their children sick because of the virtue and the pity they would get from the general community, and they would deliberately make their kids sick so that they could get the sympathy. Transgender ideology is transgenderism by proxy, because I dare say, I know the stats. When you notice a certain demographic of Hollywood, LA liberal, that for whatever the reason have wildly, radically, statistically, impossibly high levels of transgender children, you know it's probably coming from somewhere else and not the child. Find a nice, vulnerable, borderline on the spectrum, autistic child, convince them that they are, in fact, right in their confusion. And what do you end up with? You end up with Cynthia Nixon and her Jewish son. I'm putting both of those words in quotes. The child is half Jewish because Cynthia Nixon, for those of you who don't know, was the whore from Sex and the City. Her husband, or the man that she had the child with, is Jewish. Under Jewish law, we all, whatever, they'll certainly qualify as Jewish. The son, in quote, end quote, in question, is a girl. It's Cynthia Nixon's daughter, who happens to be trans. You look up celebs who have trans, my goodness, you'll find a lot of, what's going on? Do you want to see this? That's not working. Oh, now it's going to, well, here's the news, by the way, if you haven't heard this. Cynthia Nixon, according to the New York Post, says her Jewish son, who is a half-Jewish girl, is on a, quote, hunger strike, end quote, to support Gaza. It's a known fact that Greta Thunberg was Greta Thunberg autistic. I'm pretty sure that that's a known fact. Yes, Greta Thunberg has been diagnosed with autism spectrum. It's an amazing thing, eh? All of these activist children exploited by their parents tend to be autistic. Let me see what is Cynthia Nixon's child. Is Cynthia Nixon's trans child autistic? Let's see this. Cynthia Nixon revealed son Steph is trans. This was from 2018. Whatever, we'll read this here. Sex and the City star Cynthia Nixon said her son, unquote, observant Jew, end quote, is currently doing a hunger strike with friends in Chicago to support Gaza and bring attention to the humanitarian crisis there. So easily manipulated, exploited for cheap political profit. Now she's a Jew when she wants to go and do what, oh, well, look how righteous she has to be. She's an observant Jew who calls herself trans, a son. I'm fairly certain that it's a fundamental tenet of all religions that you're made in the image of God and that God doesn't make mistakes that need you to correct them as though you are God. Set that aside. Not really going to get into the absurdity of this story. Listen to this. They got to emphasize, people. Her son, Nixon, her son, Steph Moses, is doing the strike as part of the advocacy with Jewish Voices for Peace, the self-proclaimed Jewish anti-Zionist group that stands in solidarity with Palestinians. I'm not getting into the merits of any of these claims. I hate these arguments. But my goodness, is it interesting how Greta Thunberg exploited for the climate crisis, now being exploited for the Middle Eastern crisis. Now they take a trans, probably on the spectrum, confused kid, call her observant Jew, and look how legitimate her position has to be now as a result on hunger strike. He, make sure you say it over and over again, and 5 other of his compatriots are doing a hunger strike in Chicago Monday. Nixon told Newsweek, stop starving Gaza, stop arming Israel. He doesn't have illusions that he's going to end the war. But I think he wants to do everything he can, she added. Nixon, who is best known for playing a whore on Sex and the City, was Project whatever. Okay, fine. That's about the extent of that story that we care about. Exploiting children, sexualizing children, mutilating children, and feeling so bloody righteous and virtuous while you're doing it. At which point, Cory Booker says, "Hold my beer, Corn Pop. I got to come in here." Corn Pop Booker puts out a tweet yesterday, I guess. What time is it? June 18th? Yeah, it was yesterday. Today, the Supreme Court chose to abandon trans children in America. Upholding the Tennessee ban on medical care for trans kids is heartless. This is a sad day, but I know I will never stop fighting to protect trans children everywhere. I'm sorry. This is fucking perverted. I don't know how old this health god kid is. I'm going to look in a second here, but just listen to this adult grown-ass male talking about sex and kids, because that's what it is. Sex, sexual preferences, genitals, this freaking pervert of a zhlubby sucking at the tit of the government, jackass Cory Booker, pathological liar, talking about children and sex because he's a fucking pervert.
No trans children. I hear the fear. I hear the worry that they're not safe. Think about this for a second. The number one killer of children in America is gun violence. They talk about that, the threat there? No. Singling out less than 1% of our population who has the highest rates of bullying, threats of violence. Heck, about 30% of LGBTQ kids, period, report missing school because of fear. And they made them the center of their political campaign. Faith teaches me to love everyone. What that means is you lead with a more courageous empathy for the struggles of trans children in America. No trans children. I hear the fear. I hear the worry.
Josh Helfgott seems to be 35 years old. Another adult making the online presence that they've garnered followers for, about talking about the sexuality of children. There's a word for that, and it's called grooming. And once upon a time, it used to be called perversion. And may we go back to a day when adults do not talk about sex or sexuality with anyone else other than their children, and don't make an industry of it. Because at first it's grassroots, then it gets co-opted, then it gets corporatized, then it gets politicized, and then it turns into what you see right now. An industry built around exploiting vulnerable, mentally unwell, confused, on the spectrum children. Let me see this. What percentage of trans kids are autistic? Let's see if I can just get a quick answer to this. We're going with AI overview on Google. Research suggests there's a higher prevalence of both autism and gender diversity in the same individual than would be expected by chance. Multiple studies have explored this co-occurrence, including looking at the rates of autism and transgender and gender diverse individuals and vice versa. Let's see, here we go. Prevalence of autism in transgender. I'll show you the results so that you don't take my word for it, but it's worth what it's worth, but I know that it's statistically anomalous. Prevalence of autism in transgender and gender diverse individuals. Study estimate that 11% of transgender and gender diverse individuals are diagnosed with autism. This is significantly higher than the estimated prevalence of autism in the general population, which is around 1 to 2%. Shocking. Doctors, perverts, politicians, targeting mentally vulnerable children to confuse the ever-loving shit out of them so that the doctors can make money off of it, the politicians can score political points out of it, and the fucking perverts online can make a social media following out of it and talk to other people's children because they don't have children of their own. They can't subvert their own children that they don't have, and they get power, pleasure, and satisfaction out of subverting the children of others. Serenity now.
All right, there you have it, folks. I just wanted to share that with you so that he could tell you about, the weirdness that's out there. Unbelievable. And of course, the Democrats are fully behind this. All right, let me click on this Rumble link and show you that this video does come from Viva Frei. I'm following his channel, giving him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's get back here and see what else we have. Right down here with Robert Gouveia, some more court information. Gavin Newsom about to lose again. All right, let's take a look at this and see what Robert Gouveia has to say. Let me get it back to the beginning. Wait a minute. Uh-oh.
And Republicans still.
I have the wrong link there. I'm going to have to come over here to Murtech.com. I'll update the link on that. Let's come down here to Robert Gouveia. These videos that I share with you folks are videos that I've posted on Murtech.com. All right, here we go. Robert Gouveia, Gavin Newsom about to lose again. Here we go.
The court recounted bad actors were armed with fireworks, rocks, mangoes, oh no, concrete, chairs, and bottles of liquid. Probably disgusting.
You would be willing to send troops if the president ordered it to Chicago, New York City. That's right.
Well, thankfully, New York City, unlike California, unlike Gavin Newsom, is willing to step up and address the issue with their local law
I
enforcement.
will take that as a yes.
As I've said, Senator, I don't believe district courts should determine national security policy, but if the
That was
Supreme
not my
Court rules
question.
on a topic, we will abide by that.
Gavin Newsom having a tough time out there in California. Can't even build a train or a bathroom in San Francisco. It takes 20 years to do that. But he's also now having to deal with illegal invaders who he, for some reason, continues to have a fantasy are his constituents or something. Happy to have him just torching his entire cities down in his state, ripping it apart. Now he sued President Trump, saying you have to remove all the National Guard who are protecting our state from our state. Now, we saw that after a lower level judge called Breyer approved the lawsuit from Gavin Newsom, that it went up to the Court of Appeals and they reversed Breyer. They said, okay, this guy's nuts, and said that you're stopped from stopping Trump. So the National Guard remained. Then this went up to the Court of Appeals and we saw they sent that kid out of high school on his break in between gym sessions, and he came over and then did his oral argument, and it didn't sound like it went too well for him either. So now Trump and the DOJ via Pete Hegseth have responded to Gavin Newsom, and this is their opposition to Gavin's attempt to get an injunction against them, which would be the court and the judge preventing Trump from using the National Guard in the state of California. So writing the following when we get into it, saying, after violent protests, judge, and disorder targeting immigration law enforcement operations shocked LA, Trump stepped in, and he exercised his authority to call into federal service members of the Guard to protect federal personnel and property. Protesters had, among other things, done a bunch of bad stuff, right? Throwing objects at federal security officers, used large commercial dumpsters to breach a federal complex, insurrection, used chairs and other items as weapons, insurrection, attacked federal officers for hours, insurrection, trapped one officer inside her vehicle while a crowd pummeled her car with stones, and she didn't shoot anybody in the neck, cut a perimeter fence that federal officials had constructed, breaching, launched incendiary devices at officers, Molotov cocktails and other things, lit fires in dumpsters and trash bins, vandalized a federal facility at the center of the protests, leaving the building security checkpoints in ruins. Indeed, LA police, even the chief, admitted they were overwhelmed and things have gotten out of control. All of this at a whole different level than anything that happened on January 6th. Which was a 3, maybe 4-hour riot. They were back in the building that night. Lectern guy moved the podium 2 feet. They had a meltdown, okay? They unleashed the FBI all over the entire country to kick in doors and round people up. But all of a sudden, Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass and the Democrats like Van Hollen are hoisting these people up on their shoulders, even though they were launching incendiaries into the police. Now, on this record, Trump determined, I got to do something about this, saying the federal government can get in here and do an act. The purpose is limited to the protection of a couple things: federal personnel and property that are under siege by these foreign aggressors, challenging the nation's authority to remove illegal aliens, right? Even the so-called peaceful protesters, they don't have to be throwing a Molotov cocktail. If they're standing there obstructing the operation of federal agents, standing there with a sign, and there's like 50 of them blocking a van or something like that, you might call that civil disobedience and whatever. It's still obstruction. If, you know, MAGA was doing that when a J6er was being rounded up or something like that illegally for peacefully protesting in the Capitol building, which is the People's House, and so on, right? And they were waved in there, tapped on the shoulders by cops to come in. What would they do? Would they just sit around and say, oh, those are peaceful protesters stopping enforcement of federal law? No. So why do illegal aliens get the benefit of the doubt? Oh, that's because they get a premium version of America, where they get extra due process, no real requirements or responsibilities, free healthcare, free education, and then margaritas with senators who come down there and have foot massages for them in their prison cells. Congress has required the executive to carry out these removal operations. Congress ordered us to do it. You got 2 branches of government here, which are effectuated by dedicated public servants who are doing their jobs. Now, the state of California and Gavi responded this lawlessness by politicizing Trump's protection of federal property and personnel, and their lawsuit, Gavin, is meritless. To start, it intrudes upon the president's unreviewable discretion. SCOTUS long ago held that when the president exercises authority vested in him by Congress to call forth the militia, it is his exclusive discretion by law. Thus, you, judge, and this court has no authority to second-guess the president's judgment, but even if this determination were not committed to the president's discretion, the president still has every right to mobilize the National Guard and the Marines to quell violence impeding enforcement of federal law, as well as protect federal agents and property from violent mobs that local authorities cannot or choose not to control. Congress has empowered the president to handle these things, especially when there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, which is literally what's happening. And they're waving foreign flags in their mechanism of obstruction. Now, both statutory elements are met here, either of which authorize the President Trump to use the National Guard. Violent actions of uncontrolled mobs undertaken to disrupt the enforcement of law constitutes a rebellion, or at least the danger of a rebellion against federal authority. We're not going to let that happen. It's a rebellion. It's an invasion. We had it endorsed by the president of the Senate in Mexico, who held up a map showing this is ours, and it is not. Honor your treaties. We paid for that. And as intended, these violent actions have impeded the ability of federal officials to enforce the law. Now, in granting a temporary restraining order, this court got stayed, but we still have to battle over it. This court nonetheless concluded that neither of these conditions were satisfied. Trump can't do either of those things. You haven't met the rules. What are you talking about? Rebellion? No, these are just peaceful protesters. All they're doing is eating pupusas together. The court's determinations that the term rebellion does not encompass violent resistance to the government has no basis in the law. What are you talking about? It's literally the definition. As for the court's apparent interpretation, they say that this section is totally inapplicable to mob violence. There's no support in the statute for this. And any of these interpretations from this Judge Breyer would paralyze the president. That's not what the statute enables. So in addition, Newsom's argument that the relevant orders failed to comply with the law because they were not coming through the governor, right, which we heard that get talked about a lot in the Court of Appeals, has no merit. But even if there were a procedural error, it was harmless, and it would be grossly inequitable to say that we didn't send Gavin a memo, and so therefore we have to withdraw the guard. That would be ridiculous. All of the things that Trump did are valid. There are no 10th Amendment concerns. There is no posse comitatus problem, and all of the remaining factors support the president as well. If you say that the executive branch has to get rid of the National Guard, you're going to threaten the safety of law enforcement officers. You're going to threaten the safety of public. In California, the deployment of the National Guard has been critical to the protection of federal personnel and property historically, and the balance of the equity strongly weigh in our favor. And contrary to their theory that we caused the escalation, not true at all. Rioters continue to object to ICE enforcing the law, and they're going to continue to target our facilities, and that's why we had to act. And so what's going to happen now, if you remove us, is cause concrete harm, and we cannot allow that to happen. The balance of the harms favors Trump and the government, so do not force the National Guard to go. Background. Trump writes, the Constitution authorizes Congress to provide for calling forth the militia, right? U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. The National Guard, which is part of the organized militia, according to the U.S. Code, consists of two overlapping but legally distinct organizations, right? So now we're going back to the root source. Where does the National Guard power even come from? Oh, well, it's from the militia power. Well, who has that? Oh, Congress does, not the president. Wait, I thought the National Guard was just called in by Trump. He's not Congress. Well, so we have to follow the bouncing ball. Where did it originate from? Article 1, the legislative branch has it, but they're going to delegate it like they always do, as we'll see. They say illegally distinct organizations, okay? We got the National Guard, which is a federal entity, and the State National Guard. Writing, since 1933, all persons who have enlisted in a state guard have also enlisted in the National Guard. In the latter capacity, when they became a part of the Reserve Corps, unless until ordered as active duty, they were part of the state, right? So when you join in, it sounds like you are part of both, but you're activated for the state. But we can also just turn on the switch and now you're activated for us. Now, while ordered into federal service, members of the National Guard lose their status as members of the state militia, right? So, feds go on, state goes off. Now you're ours. And becomes federal soldiers with the president as the commander-in-chief of those forces. That's how the statutes and how the Supreme Court, here it says, has interpreted this in this case called per pitch. Now, Section 12406 is one part of the law that permits the federalization of the guardsmen. The statute traces back to 1792, and that is when President Washington responded to the Whiskey Rebellion. Now it's been modified. So we codified it. We started to turn, these other kind of various acts into the U.S. Code. We got everything organized, created the U.S. Code, put things, Title 18's over here and all the things. So, here we added this, kind of modified this based on what we passed back in the late 1700s. Said whenever the United States is invaded, as we're being invaded now openly, or there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, which I think would also apply because it's federal agents trying to enforce the law, or the president is unable with regular force to execute the laws, the president may, right? U.S. Code wrote this, the president may call into federal service members of the National Guard for the purposes of rebelling or suppressing the rebellion, repel the invasion or suppress the rebellion. Got it. Orders for those purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of D.C., through the commanding general, and the president federalizes them. So what happened here is on Friday, June 6th, officers from ICE conducted operations in LA. A crowd gathered at an enforcement site and tried to prevent ICE from enforcing the law by throwing objects at ICE vehicles. Now, just because you threw something, yes, that makes you, suspected criminal because that's assault on a federal officer. And many J6ers got hunted down for less than this, for less than that at all. Not throwing anything. You threw something and it hit a cop, Proud Boys got charged with throwing a water bottle. That was one of their assaults. So whether it was frozen or not, I don't know. They'd probably say it was. Proud Boys would say it wasn't, but the cops. So several individuals were arrested in operation. We'll see if the rest are identified and hunted down like the J6ers were, and brought an ERO to the federal facility in downtown, basically blocking, right? And just because you're throwing something, that obviously puts you in one category. But if you're still there and standing there and the vehicle cannot go by and you're one of 1,000 people who are all there blocking the road, that's a flash mob of obstruction. So they should be tracked and arrested, just like the prior precedent, because no one's above the law. Now, around 5 p.m. that night, a crowd gathered there and protests turned violent. The violence spread across the downtown, and they're blocking gates, they're blocking doorways, entries and exits, not just blocking the streets, blocking the operation and functionality of the facility. That should be obstruction. Arrest them. Protesters pinned down several services officers who were left severely outnumbered while trying to defend a parking garage connected to several buildings. Protesters threw concrete chunks, bottles of liquid, disgusting kinds of liquids probably, and other objects at officers in a sustained assault repeatedly. They also attempted to use a large rolling commercial dumpster as a battering ram to breach the parking garage, causing damage to federal property. These protests were explicitly about the immigration raids. Now, Newsom and the judge it's mostly peaceful, bigots. Officer feared for their safety, as we got in the declarations. In fact, ICE and Homeland Security officers responded to support these officers under siege, and they attempted to use non-lethal force to disperse the crowd. Yeah, unlike Lieutenant, Boyd, who just decided to shoot some woman in the neck, who is Ashley Babbitt, the federal officers managed to prevent a breach of the facility, but it took LAPD officers 90 minutes to arrive. Finally pushed the crowd back. Meanwhile, the protest turned extremely violent. One news report shows demonstrators using chairs, dumpsters, and other weapons. Once on the scene, LAPD declared an unlawful assembly, 7 p.m., ordered the protesters to disperse. Many did not. They began attacking LAPD officers. The scene was not even cleared until 11 p.m. that night, leaving extensive damage to multiple buildings. That night, Trump called Gavin. He said, "Listen, Gavin," to discuss the dangers to federal personnel. And he requested that Gavin take action to stop the violence. But the violence intensified. The next day, large crowds congregated around a Homeland office in the Paramount neighborhood. The crowd blocked traffic, began to attack the immigration officers. 7 hours, double January 6th, of nonstop fighting between federal officers and protesters ensued. The crowd boxed in federal officers, surrounded an officer's vehicles, which they pummeled with stones. They launched mortar-style fireworks. They set at least one vehicle on fire. They threw objects of all nature at the cops. Rioters also breached the perimeter fence of the federal building, damaged vehicles, mortar-style fireworks, multiple explosions happening at federal officers. You see all that on January 6th? Molotovs being thrown to burn buildings down? You see that? No, think so. Senator John Fetterman, among others, called it anarchy and true chaos. John's right sometimes. Protests continued into the weekend. Protesters blocked the 101 freeway, lit dumpsters on fire, set off commercial-grade fireworks towards federal officers, damaged federal buildings, buildings, ruined a federal building security checkpoint, severely injured federal officers. Downtown LA was operating on significantly restricted access because they took over the whole state, or the whole region rather, and have been severely damaged and vandalized. Lost total control, Gavin. So then Trump says, all right, you're terrible at this, man. Your state's a disaster. Trump federalized 2,000 members of the National Guard. Said, all right, go and clean it up. Then they informed the Adjutant General that Trump was going to mobilize this. 30 minutes later, they told that we got news of this, relayed the news, we're going to mobilize these people. The two spoke again after another half hour, and the general confirmed that the state of California would comply with the orders come through. Then at 8:13, Newsom announced that Trump is taking over. Trump is deploying the 2,000 National Guards, and he criticized Trump. He says this is the wrong mission. But at the time, Gavin didn't even object to Trump, didn't come out and say anything about it. It's like, well, they're kind of burning our whole city down. So then the CNGB and the Adjutant General spoke twice more to coordinate deployment orders before they were even formally relayed. Later that night, we then transmitted to a bunch of other people Trump's memo, as well as a memo from Hegseth. Hegseth's memo bore the label "through the governor." Now, based on the president's invocation of this, we were directing the general to effectuate the invocation of the National Guard. DOD transmitted the memo, right? We're seeing how this memo got created. Then on Monday, Hegseth issued a second memo, activating another 2,000. The memo was also transmitted to Newsy's office, and they knew what was coming. Now, since the call to action, Guardsmen and Marines have gone in there, and they've done their jobs. The Guardsmen and Marines established outside perimeters observation posts, presence patrols. They provide personnel protection. They enable federal law enforcement officers to do their jobs. The Marines temporarily detained one individual as a protective measure after that guy tried to enter restricted areas. Now, the violence has since continued at federal facilities across California. In fact, on June 14th, a crowd of 1,000 people gathered outside the federal building and the U.S. courthouse, and some assaulted law enforcement officers with rocks, bricks, bottles, fireworks, and other objects. Some protesters threw red paint on FPS and federal officers and National Guards members. Protesters at the LA Federal Building also blocked the parking garage exits, preventing ICE from even exiting. But more importantly, the presence of the National Guard and the Marines has played an essential role in protecting federal property, and we're going to continue to do that, saying we followed the law, explaining the president's determinations are his exclusive jurisdiction. In fact, President Madison, rewind the clock back to the War of 1812, they said he could make these decisions. He had activated the state militia pursuant to a 1795 law. And they said that the authority to activate the militia must be confided to the president. The judges don't have the ability to act as the president. There's no basis in the statute for either the court or the plaintiffs any ability to second guess Trump's determination whether something is actually a rebellion or whether the federal government does actually have the authority to do certain things. And by the way, it also implicates the political question doctrine. Thus, if the act of an official is one where the executive possesses the discretion, then it is a decision for the executive, right? In other words, these are political questions. Like these people saying that if you're unhappy with what Trump did, go impeach him. All right. You have Congress, go impeach him and get mad. Otherwise, you can't substitute a judge's judgment in for the president's. And the necessary conditions existed. This is a foreign invasion. They're waving foreign flags around, interfering and obstructing with federal law. Trump explained that recent acts of violence against ICE impede faithful execution and operation of immigration law. And there's no serious debate about this. This is a dangerous condition. In fact, even LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell publicly acknowledged that the LAPD was overwhelmed. He said things have gotten out of control. Quote, somebody could easily be killed. In addition to all of this, they also torched the federal courthouse and are throwing objects at law enforcement. They're setting fires. It is impeding, damaging our vehicles, Molotov cocktails, looting, burning a vehicle, and vandalizing property, all in the exhibits attached. Now, their submission also reflects the reality here, that the crowd is refusing to comply with local authorities, which is why we have to come in here. Now, the word rebellion, in case you forgot, Judge, it means open resistance or opposition to an authority or tradition. Look at Black's Law Dictionary. It means disobedience of a legal command or summons. And a bunch of other dictionary definitions. Webster's. Okay, the Cyclopedic Dictionary. The American Dictionary of the English Language. Just look it up. All of it says that rebellion is very simple. You ignore these definitions, but you highlight Some other narrow definition. Rebellion means open resistance to lawful authority, forcible opposition, resistance to the laws, to the process that is legitimate and lawfully installed. Look, deliberate, organized resistance by force and arms to the laws or operations of the government. Everywhere, okay? Rebellion. You're opposing the lawful execution of a government. They say no. It has to be conducted by an established government or ruler, which I think you can make the argument. You can say, well, I mean, it's endorsed by Scheinbaum down there in Mexico. She says if we tax their remittances, which is our money going into their economy, then she's going to say that they should mobilize. The president of the Senate down there held up the map. This is our land now, because we don't honor our treaties, even though we got paid like $500 million in modern times. Don't care, right? So you can even make that argument, but it's actually not the definition. Rebellion is not that high. Like, it doesn't have to be, hi, I'm Claudia Scheinbaum, and I approve a rebellion. That's not what we're talking about. Congress did not limit this to efforts to overthrow a government. Don't have to take over the entire system. They're just obstructing operation that's lawful. This would senselessly make the president's authority to mobilize the National Guard turn on the mob state of mind. And it would exclude perhaps the most well-known rebellion in American history, the Whiskey Rebellion, which was suppressed when Washington called up the militia under a predecessor statute. Now, the Whiskey Rebellion's object was to oppose a collection of a particular tax, not to overthrow the government. Now, to be sure, Washington took that action under a 1792 statute that did not by its terms refer to rebellion. But it would have been wholly uncontroversial back then to refer to the Whiskey Rebellion as a rebellion, but they were going to try to take over America. They were just rebelling against the tax. And so if you use their definition, you're going to usurp authority from the English language, all right? The definition of rebellion has been met. Rioters were violent and armed. The court recounted bad actors were armed with fireworks, rocks, mangoes, oh no, concrete, chairs, and bottles of liquid, probably disgusting illegal alien invader liquids. Others threw rocks and other objects, including a Molotov cocktail. The mangoes could have been delicious, you don't know. Anyways, but some people on June 8th also set off fireworks, fired paintballs, mobs besieged federal buildings, commercial dumpsters, battering rams, numerous injuries. We know, we saw it. The demonstrators and their resistance was open. In fact, many of them said, it's time to eliminate ICE. It's death to ICE. They said they wanted to eliminate Trump, leaving no ambiguity as to the purpose of their actions. They organized themselves through social media, and we'll see if they get rounded up by the FBI as seditious conspirators, because they also use social media to incriminate J6ers and the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, posting the locations of federal law enforcement employees so they can construct their flash mobs, which is a group of obstructionists. Now, at the TRO phase, this court stated there's little evidence of whether it's violent or not. But that's ridiculous, Judge. You know what's going on. Even if the situation in LA had not risen to the level of a rebellion, the standard is not even an actual rebellion. If there's a danger of a rebellion, we can even do that. Congress did not require Trump to wait for the president, an actual rebellion to materialize before you can deploy. Only once they've actually seized a certain portion of land, then you can go and respond. Makes no sense. Has never been the way this works. And so they were not able to control their land and their state. That's why we had to step in. Trump complied with all of the procedural requirements. It's common practice to communicate the way that we practice and communicated. 30 minutes after we alerted the general that we were going to mobilize the guard, they spoke again and again. After another half hour, they all knew about it. They read the statute to say that we have to consult with Gavin and get his opinion and get his consent. That is not right at all. The court didn't even force that standard. Through a third party is not an invitation to have a conversation about it. But in any event, Trump did discuss the situation with him and sent memos, and everything was going on legally and appropriately, and we followed the procedures. Now, as they wrap this up, they tell us that you should not have an injunction here. You should allow us to continue to exercise the National Guard. We had pinned down people, federal buildings were heavily vandalized, 7 hours of nonstop fighting. They set fires to vehicles with propane tanks. They engaged in looting. Numerous federal officers and agents were injured, among other mayhem. And we've established why we need to be here. Any of your suppositions, Judge, to the opposite are contrary to the record. There is violence. They were using dumpsters and battering rams to knock these doors down. And removing the National Guard is not going to de-escalate anything. All you're doing is removing protections for federal officials and property. And we are not letting up on enforcing the law. Now, if we keep them here, there are no real harms for you other than a nice, safe city. And so in conclusion, we say that this judge and this court should deny Gavin Newsom a preliminary injunction and find in favor of Trump. So we'll see what happens on this. Of course, we got some reaction. Pete Hegseth got into this with Pocahontas, who went nuts. And here is what she said today when she got into it with Hegseth.
Secretary Hegseth, if the president wanted to deploy Marines to Chicago and New York City like he did in Los Angeles, would you carry out that order even if the local governors and mayors objected?
Well, Senator, because Governor Newsom was unwilling to address
That's not
protecting
my question.
federal law enforcement agents in Los Angeles, President Trump had all the authorities, and the Defense Department happily supported defending our ICE agents in the conduct of their job. They have the right as Americans to be able to do their job without being attacked by mobs. And we will protect them in that process. If others potentially needed it, we would provide that.
I know that you heard my questions. So you would be willing to send troops if the president ordered it to Chicago, New York City? That's right.
Well, thankfully, New York City, unlike California, unlike Gavin Newsom, is willing to step up and address the issue with their local law
I
enforcement.
will take that as a yes. How about if the...
Well, if illegal alien invaders, Liz, are burning federal buildings in New York or Chicago and torching federal property in their states, waving foreign flags around, and they refuse to secure the safety and security of other American citizens who don't want that going on in their states, then yeah, of course he'll send them in there.
The president says he wants to send troops to 15 cities. Would you be willing to do that?
Senator, I don't accept your hypothetical because that's
hypothetical.
Not a real
That's
one.
the question. You're the Secretary of Defense. Would you send troops to 15 cities? If the president said do it, would you do it? 15 cities.
Again, Senator, it's a complete hypothetical lacking any context
Look,
at all.
You're the Secretary
and I refuse
of
to
Defense.
box myself in based on questioning on a hypothetical.
But you're here asking for $1 trillion, and I want to know how you're going to spend it. And so my question is, if Donald Trump tells you to send troops to 15 American cities, are you going to spend the money and send the troops?
Thankfully, we're spending money on securing our southern border, a way the previous administration abandoned and allowed 21 million illegals to enter our country. So defending our homeland is a real serious priority under this administration, and we're doing it.
I understand the question about defense. Secretary Hegseth, about 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines have been sent to L.A. Is there a number of troops deployed to American cities over the objections of governors and mayors at which you would be concerned that we are undermining our national defense?
Senator, we've spent 2 decades guarding other people's borders. We think at the Defense Department it's about time we shore up ours.
So that's my question. Is there a number at which sending those troops to Los Angeles or Chicago or New York starts to undermine our ability to defend ourselves around the globe? Is there a number?
Senator, we look at capabilities and readiness around the globe all the time, and we're quite satisfied with our capabilities to defend the homeland.
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute here. Why do we need to defend ourselves around the globe? Okay? You know, I'm a proponent of army bases in Germany and Japan and all over the world. We are not the world's police. Okay? I don't get it. Of course, you know, these Democrats just pull shit out of their ass and throw it on the wall, hoping it'll stick.
And we'll provide more if and when it's necessary.
So you are satisfied with our capabilities. Let me just ask, have you actually done the analysis and figured out how many troops you can deploy domestically before you start to undermine
92
readiness
million.
Around the world? Have you done that analysis?
Wrong topic, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Then would you let the rest of us in on it? We are the Senate Armed Services Committee, and you're here to ask for $1 trillion. What's the number?
We've got contingencies and plans for any number of capabilities should governors be unable, as Gavin Newsom has been, to actually secure his own federal agents in their cities.
How many troops can you deploy domestically before you start to cut into our readiness internationally?
As I said, previous administrations deployed our National Guard all around the globe in numbers far beyond what we were capable of supporting. So limited contingencies inside the United States to protect federal law enforcement is doable.
Orders you to remove remove troops from American city streets. Will you do so?
As I've said, Senator, I don't believe district courts should determine national security policy, but if the
That was
Supreme
not my
Court rules
question.
on a topic, we will abide by that.
Okay.
Nicely done there, Pete. And that line about, it's about time we start focusing on our own borders was very much appreciated. So thank you to Pete Hegseth for that. Getting into it with high cheekbones. 1/10/24th genetically certified Native American Pocahontas. She's just an inspiration. Now here's Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. He came out, he was talking about what's going on in these blue sanctuary jurisdictions. Speaker Johnson explaining what should be happening in these Democrat bastions of illegality.
Well, I tell you what, they've got a very difficult job here in this deep blue territory with a mayor who is on the wrong side of the law. And they're doing everything they can. It's a patriotic duty. They're understaffed. They're overwhelmed with the workload. They're trying to go after the dangerous criminal illegal aliens that are in the country harming American citizens. The mayor of Chicago thinks that is an ill-conceived mission. What is he talking about? It's madness. They have to do the job and they need to do it better. We're working on the One Big Beautiful Bill to allow them the resources that are desperately needed. I mean, they are doing the job. The border is secured. We are locked down. We're not allowing illegals into the country anymore. But the enforcement and removal of the dangerous people who got here is an essential task for our ICE agents and officers to take care of. They need more personnel. They need more facilities. We're here to see it.
Yep. Well, sanctuary cities all across the country are having a real difficult time trying to figure out how to deal with this whole situation. And I think you mentioned Mayor Johnson from Chicago, who we saw earlier this week, was focused on rhymes, repeating to the crowd multiple times, supporting the black is not a criminal act, or something like that. That was his new policy over there in Chicago. So I don't know what all the illegal aliens they are going to say about that, but that's what Congress is having to grapple with. So we'll keep our eye, of course, on that one. Shout out to Hegseth. We'll see where the judge goes on this one. I think that ultimately this Judge Breyer is going to have a difficult time with this case and will probably do everything he can to find in favor of Newsom, but you're probably going to get told by the Court of Appeals the Ninth Circuit didn't seem to be buying anything that Newsom was shoving down their gullet, because you could imagine they don't want their cities burning down either.
Okay, there you have it, folks. Okay, let me click on this Rumble link and show you that this video does come from Robert Gouveia. I'm following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. It's great information. Let's get back here to the description box of this video. And there is a comment here, comment of the day from Debbiebs, and she has done some chats here. Saw a couple of chats that she dropped. Let me go ahead and click on this, the comment of the day. All right. I love hearing your behind-the-scenes origin stories. I love your channel videos. The service that you provide is amazing, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you. I appreciate that, Debbiebs. As I said, as I've said earlier, I read your comments, and I appreciate your support, and I thank you very, very much for commenting on my videos. And this is a great comment. And believe it or not, folks, I didn't have to pay her a dime to do this. She did this all on her own. So thank you, Debbiebs. I greatly appreciate it. All right. Let me make sure I get this comment here. Kind of lost my screen there. There we go. All right. And again, that's the comment. I don't know if you actually saw it, but that's the comment from Debbiebs. So thank you again, Debbiebs. All right, let's get back to this screen here. And I have one more little snippet here that I want to share with you from Glenn Beck on a bonus here. Now, Glenn dropped a video. Glenn Beck reacts to Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz debate. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of like weird how Tucker Carlson goes off on Ted Cruz about Iran, and it's weird. And Glenn Beck actually admits to that. But the thing that I want you to hear in his video, let's go ahead and get to that, is right here about the 11-minute mark. He talks a little bit about AI, and I think it's very interesting about what he says. Now, if you've listened to me anytime at all, you know that I'm not a big fan of AI. I think AI is good, but it's only as good as who programs it. Okay, it's a computer programming. That's what it is. It searches all these databases for information. But then again, there are borderlines. Who is actually giving it the instructions on what to look for and what to deliver? But this is it's not more than 3 minutes long, but let's go ahead and see what Glenn Beck has to say. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that the audio comes through on this. So let's give it a shot.
Humility is the key to all of this. And we're all in our lizard brains. And now our final battle, we're just tearing each other apart. We're tearing our own side apart. I mean, look at what happened with Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I like both of those men. I didn't want to see those guys fight. I still don't want to see those guys fight. I would love to see them. It would be great. It would be awesome if they could come together. And even if when they came together, they hugged it out and said, I don't agree with everything he says, but he's still my friend. And we're still on the same fight. I don't agree with what he's doing here, here, and here. And he doesn't agree with me here, here, and here. But we know one thing. This country is worth saving. And while we might disagree on how to get there, we both know we have to get there. And if we continue to divide ourselves, there will be no one left to enjoy the country, and we'll never be able to save it by ourselves. So we can either just keep bashing each other and you know, I give this monologue to me as well. I want you to know. It is so hard for me to give you the monologue I'm giving you right now for a couple of reasons. It's not the monologue I want to give. The monologue I want to give, is really passionate. It's also not the monologue you want me to give. Because do you know what is happening with AI right now? Right now with AI, they are now changing the algorithms to give you the answer you are looking for. We are now training AI to put us into more of a bubble and convince all of us that we are right because it will give you the answer you want. Could anything be more destructive? When the lights go out, the schools burn down, your house burns down. When the next storm rolls in, it ain't going to be our righteousness that saves us. It's going to be the friend. It's going to be the family member that's still willing to pick up the phone, even after the last disagreement, and say, I'm here for you. I'm coming to help.
All right. There you have it, folks. Okay. As you can see, this video does come from Glenn Beck. I am subscribed to his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. But that little snippet there, little 10 seconds worth of information on AI, it's now being programmed. AI is all computer programming. Okay, that would be the computer programming that works the robot arms to build a car or whatever. It's all a computer program that searches the database to find out, like Copilot, okay, and Grok. Man, I cannot believe the advertisements that I see online about Copilot. Best Buy is even advertising a laptop with Copilot, an AMD processor. Okay, so you know Copilot is paying Best Buy to advertise that with their computers. Something is really weird, and all this advertisement that you see online about Copilot, with Windows. I mean, I've got it right here. Up here, this little symbol here, Copilot, Control Shift to get to it. Why would they be spending that much money? I don't know how much it is, but they're spending some money on something that is free. Where's the return on investment for this? What are they getting out of people going to Copilot and entering information? Okay, create me a cartoon icon. Okay? Take this picture and turn it into something else. Seen an advertisement. Which is quicker, a snail or a slug? I don't know if you've seen any of these, but it's like, okay, what's all this advertisement for something that's free? And my daddy always told me nothing's ever really free. Somebody's paying for it someplace. And it might work itself around to you being the one that pays for it. Okay, there you have it, folks. That's my daily podcast, my daily news update. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's go ahead and see if there's any more. Debbiebs, yes, she gave me the live chats. All right, let me go ahead and copy this into a comment because I want those live chats will just kind of evaporate once this live stream is over. So let me go ahead and make that. The live chats I feel are important to this video, so I'm going to make it permanent for this video. I'm going to do a quick refresh here. Okay, and all right, I've had 164 people look at this video so far. I've got 20 watching right now. I've got 20 watching it on the live stream, and I've got 3 thumbs up. Okay, so if I could get 17 of you to slide down here and give me a thumbs up, and that would be fantastic. I would greatly appreciate that. Right here. Okay, 20 people watching, 3 thumbs up. 164 have watched it so far. So please give me a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate that. Okay, and here's where I copied in Debbiebs's live chats. Thank you, Debbiebs, for participating. I appreciate that. Okay, let's get back here to the main screen. Folks, I have over 55 videos here at Murtech.com. And the videos that I shared with you are videos that I selected from the videos that I posted on Murtech.com. All this information is here for you at your fingertips, free of charge. The link to Murtech.com is in the description box below. Here I go talking about free again. Well, I don't charge you anything on this. I'm spending my time here to get this information out. What it's going to cost you is to maybe pay attention and not let the Democrats ruin our lives. I mean, this thing like Gavin Newsom, okay, stores were being destroyed. People were being injured. The police officers were being injured. The federal officers were being injured. And the Democrats thinks it's okay? They think that's okay, and the National Guard shouldn't get involved to control the riots? That's what the Democrat mayor of Los Angeles and the Democrat governor of California think? That no, it's okay that people get hurt? Law enforcement, federal officers get hurt? Private property gets destroyed? That's okay? All right. Well, at any rate, I will have some more news for you, my daily news wrap-up. I'll have over 50 videos in a playlist of information that's dropped today. So I hope you'll come back about 9:30 and join me for that. Go ahead and take a break. Grab a donut, cup of coffee, sandwich, soft drink, whatever. Give me time to get that set up for you. And I'll be back, as I said, around 9:30 to get that started. But in the meantime, I do want to thank you for your time, for spending it with me this evening. I hope I get to see you again later, and may God bless.